Hello and welcome to another Ableton Production Tutorials Ableton Live tutorial. The effect I would like to talk about this week is the frequency shifter effect and how it works and some of the different things that we can use it for in Ableton Live. So to start, I'm going to grab this frequency shifter effect and I'm going to drag it into a pad sound that I would like to affect. So frequency shifter has several different settings that we can do and different things that we can do with it. The primary part of it is here on the right. So we can do a shift mode where we can shift the frequency. So if we want to, say we had a 100 hertz sound, we could shift it up. If we wanted to shift it up 100 hertz, we could just shift it up, and then if we had 100 hertz input, then we would get 200 hertz out. Then we had 200 hertz sine wave up. So we could shift the entire things up and down by very large amounts. I find this large frequency shift is not very useful for pads or common effects, but these are more useful for doing things like sweeps or building effects. However, the fine frequency part here is very useful for adding just a little bit of interest or sound. The most common thing that I usually do with the fine frequency, here we can tune it just very, very small amounts, is to set it to wide. And what this will do is this will add a spread, so it'll shift the right frequency up by a certain amount and the left frequency down. So by pushing it to the right, and then the opposite takes place if we go to the left here. So that's basically here on the right, and then there's a second part. We can do a ring, where it will ring it basically at a particular frequency, and then there's a drive here, where we can drive it even harder into that ringing sound. This ringing sound is not typically very useful for applying to specific effects, but this is much more powerful for, again, going on your sweeps over here. So for now, we're just going to leave it for shift. And then to talk about the left side of the frequency shifter is basically to provide an LFO effect. So we can provide like a frequency shift, and this provides almost like a bit of vibrato. Way to think about vibrato is think about how an opera singer sings, where you can hear their pitch actually swing up and down when they hold a note. And frequency shifter lets us apply that same kind of effect in a very, very digital way, though. The amount is the amount that we're shifting that frequency, and then there's the rate. And we can either do this by a standard hertz cycles per second, or we can do it by a note frequency. Either way, we can choose a phase, whether is it affecting the left and the right channels equally at the same time, or do we want to have them out of phase? In this case, if they're out of phase, then when the left channel is on this top part here, then the right channel will be over here 180 degrees out of phase. So while the right channel is being pushed up, in this case 3.86 hertz, the right channel would be pushed down 3.86 hertz, and then you can adjust the offset as well. Let me show you the very first most common thing that we do. I want to show you this simple pad that I've built, and it's just a very simple harmony. And let's take a listen to what our frequency shifter effect does when we turn on this, when we mess around with some of the different parameters. So one thing that we can do is first let's apply just a wide. So once we turn this up to more extreme, we can hear it's really affecting things. And we can do super dramatic frequency shifts, which typically don't sound too great, but however, these can sound good transition effects. So if you want to transition to something, you just go. It's a good way to bring something in or drop something out. Like I said, it doesn't sound very good, except when this is right there at 0. We can also apply an LFO frequency shift. So let's try it with maybe 1/8. Where frequency shifter is most effective is when it's on about a 50% wet dry. So let's put it at 50%. And we immediately notice, this kind of change in the sound. And we turn on spread, suddenly we end up with this, it's like a phaser effect. And to me, this is much, much more interesting than it was before. Let's turn this down just a little bit. So that's with it off. That's with it on. So we have a much more interesting sound. We can try LFO as well. And then, how that sounds with like a kick and a side change sounds pretty cool. That's without. And that's with it. Maybe a little less. There we go. So those are the most common uses for frequency shifter working with a pad sound is, we can do this and we can make things, very interesting. Let me show you another thing that we can do if we want to create a build effect. So let's grab our little harmony pad and let's drag it out here into arrangement view. And let's drag a few bars worth out. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe let's double that. So we got 8 bars here, and a cool thing that we can do is let's turn our frequency shifter to ring. And let's turn our frequency all the way down. And we can leave our spread here. Let's turn off our LFO while we're working with this. And let's turn our wet dry all the way up. But let's adjust this frequency. Let's start all the way at 1 hertz, and let's listen to that. So we're hearing this where it's phasing in and out effect. Maybe let's turn this off. But what's cool is, that doesn't sound that interesting, but if we're looking for a cool building effect, is we can just turn this and we can bring it up so that, we have this increasing building effect. And let's take a listen. So I think 8 bars is maybe too long, but I like about that first 4 bars, and then after that I think I want to increase it more. So I'm going to leave this one here at about 10 hertz, and then I'm going to increase this all the way up. Now let's see how this sounds now. I just ended up playing a little bit because I didn't have that on. So anyways, what happens is we end up with this cool sweeping build-up effect. All we had to do was just turn on ring and mess with that single frequency bit right there. I hope this gives you a few ideas of things you can do with frequency shifter. It also works, there's some places you can apply it on sweeps. Like I said, any basic pad sounds works really, really well just to add a little bit of stereo width. You can also add just a small amount of frequency shift to things like hi-hats. So in any case, I hope you found this tutorial very useful. This is part of a series to create Ableton Live tutorials for every single Ableton Live effect. There's an entire list of them. To reach them, all you gotta do is go to the bottom of this page, go to abletonproductiontutorials.com, and then click either a production link, or there's going to be an update here shortly, so there will be an effect link at the very top of the Ableton Production Tutorials page. Just click either production or effect at the very top, and you'll get a list of every single Ableton effect and a tutorial that goes with it. So in any case, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you for the next one.